today we've got an exclusive interview with Michael Chong, fresh from him coming back from the USA. He went over there to testify in the USA courts about interference between China and other countries and USA and Canada.
I understand that you're interested in my experience of Beijing's transnational repression, or what we also call foreign interference. In May this year, I learned that a PRC diplomat working out of the PRC consulate in Toronto had, since 2020, been gathering information to further target me and my family in Hong Kong. Last month, I learned I was the target of a disinformation campaign in May of this year on the Chinese language social media platform WeChat. The Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs concluded that Beijing's role in this disinformation operation was highly probable.
Let's have a listen to what he's got to say about the ongoing inquiry and what he had to say in the United States. So, Michael, do you think your message got through in your testification? Is that even a word? In the USA?
Yes, absolutely. Look, Canada is the United States' closest trading partner and ally. That said, we often don't get a lot of attention in Washington. And so when we do, I think we have to deliver a clear message in defense of Canadian interests. And so the message I delivered was twofold. First, that foreign interference threat activities from Beijing on Canadian soil aren't just happening to me, but to many, many other Canadians across the country. And they're also targeting Canadians generally through our elections, through disinformation. And the second message I delivered was that we are ready to work more closely with the United States to strengthen our defense and security against these threats. We're willing to work with other allied democracies to do the same, and that we have to work more closely together to counter these threats. Because this is a long-term game that Beijing is playing, and these threats are not going away.
I agree, yeah. China are playing a really dangerous game. USA, they're under a threat as well from interference. But can you explain, what was your takeaway from what the USA were thinking about what you were saying and possibly where they're going to go from here?
Absolutely. What I took away is that the United States is deeply concerned about these threats to its own sovereignty, to its own defense and security, right, and that this is their number one priority. Often for Canada, our number one foreign policy priority is keeping trade and investment open because we are such an export-based economy. But that's not the case with the U.S. They are not an export-based economy. They export and import very little. It's a fairly closed economy in that respect compared to Canada. And so they are preoccupied with their defense and security, with their national security, and with these threats from Beijing. And that's why I think we need to pay attention, not only to defend Canadians back home in Canada who are facing these threats, but also to ensure that our trade and investments continue to flow two ways across that border by making sure the Americans are comfortable with our approach on national security.
With Justin Trudeau trying his best not to be involved or be part of any inquiry, do you think the Americans believe that Canada is taking this whole thing seriously?
Well, my message to them is that if we form government, we will take it seriously, that we will strengthen the defense and security partnership, that we will take espionage and foreign interference seriously. And we recently had a case just several months ago of the RCMP arresting a PRC agent at Hydro-Quebec who was stealing sensitive, leading intellectual property from Hydro-Quebec on electricity technology. So these are the kinds of threats we're facing that I think we really need to do better on. The government, as you pointed out, has been slow to react to these threats. They've only done things after we've dragged them kicking and screaming to do something, whether it's calling an independent public inquiry like they recently did, or in the introduction of a foreign agents registry, which they've yet to do, but what they've promised to do. If you compare us to other democracies, we've been late to the game. On a foreign agents registry, the United States has long had one since 1938. Australia introduced one in 2018. The UK just adopted one 2 months ago in July of this past summer. And the Canadian government's yet to introduce one, despite the fact that we are ground in many respects, ground zero for these threat activities in a much bigger way than is taking place south of the border.
So do you think the US government will start pressuring the Canadian government to actually do something about this?
Yeah, I think the Canadian government's under pressure, not just domestically, but abroad. The fact that the British Prime Minister, for example, Rishi Sunak, recently made public the fact that there was a PRC agent in the UK Parliament and that the UK government's taking this very seriously. The fact that Australia has long had a plan in place to combat these activities. The fact that Canada is not part of a new defense pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, is very, very worrying. Like as I said earlier, the U.S. is by far and away our closest trading partner and ally, and we can't neglect that relationship because we're putting the very prosperity of Canadians at risk.
So are you satisfied about the fact that we're going to have an inquiry, even though it's still going to take a long, long time to get to the bottom of what happened with the interference and everything that China have done, over the different elections? Do you think it will work out okay, or what's your opinion on the inquiry?
Well, I'm going to let Justice Hogue do her work, but I'm going to be watching very, very closely to see if the government provides the inquiry with the resources it needs to get its job done, if they cooperate with the inquiry of providing documents and information to the inquiry. That has yet to unfold, and so we'll be watching that very closely. I think it's critically important that the government support the inquiry so that it can be successful, because this is one of the important tools that needs to be put in place in order to restore Canadians' confidence in their democracy and in their parliament.
So, are you concerned that you might be targeted again in Canada? If we have another election coming up, maybe in 2025, do you think that the Chinese government will target you or your family again?
I'm further emboldened by Beijing's targeting of me to continue my work, because what their targeting of me, whether it's through disinformation operations this past May or by trying to gather information to intimidate and coerce me, what they are demonstrating when they do that is that we are being effective in speaking up for human rights, speaking up for democracy, and speaking up for the rule of law. And so it's just convinced me that we're doing the right work, that we're being effective, and I'm not going to be counter-intimidated. And in fact, I'm just going to double down on the work that we've been doing.
Well, that was quite an interesting interview with Michael Chong regarding the Chinese interference. If you enjoyed listening to a few of these more in-depth, slightly longer videos, just give us a thumbs up, guys. That would help the algorithm to push these videos a little bit more. And on that note, till next time, cheers.